All right, hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ektron Developer Office Hours. Today I think it's going to be a good conversation. We are talking about mobile design, but it's probably going to get into a number of different things, including progressive enhancement, graceful degradation. David's going to give us a little education on that. This topic came about through a Twitter conversation that David, you and I had. I don't remember how many weeks ago. I think it was before Synergy. I was like, okay, instant topic for office hours because this obviously warrants more discussion, and those are always some of the best. So before we get started, I do want to tell everybody, just as a reminder, that you can send out questions over Twitter using the EktronOH hashtag. The questions can be about Ektron, they can be about web development, they don't have to be on the topic of discussion for the day. And with that, I'll let Jay introduce himself first.
I'm Jay Burling with Hendrix College. I do webs.
I do webs. My favorite self-appointed title was web architect. I thought that was.
That's a good one. I like that one.
I wanted to adopt that one. They wouldn't give it to me, but I took it anyway.
There you go.
So, and David, I'll let you introduce yourself, and I'll let you go right into the presentation after you're done there.
My name is David Artemick. I work with Celerity, and I helped invent the internet with Al Gore.
all those tubes, they're so good.
There we go. I had to fit in. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and share a little presentation here just to kind of provide some definition and some kind of insight into what we're talking about when we mention responsive design or adaptive design, graceful degradation, and progressive enhancement. We're going to have some fun with some acronyms today.
All yeah, right. that was the reason for the subject line in the email and the tweets.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, so for everybody to understand, RWD does not mean rear-wheel drive.
So it does mean all-wheel drive, though.
It does. Yeah, we're doing RWD and AWD. This is a topic really close and dear to my heart. Zombie apocalypses, so I just wanted to kick that off a little bit of a joke right there. So
coming soon on Ektron Office Hours.
What's that?
Coming soon on Ektron Office Hours.
Yeah.
Because we need to ask web developers how to survive the zombie apocalypse.
You know, we might be some of the most well-read up on the subject.
I figured that one would resonate with everybody on here. So, so we're talking about designing for mobile. So we're going to first discuss some of the terms, and we'll be talking about all this in here. And this is from James: all-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, physical education. So we've got adaptive web design, responsive web design, progressive enhancement, and graceful degradation. Those are all the acronyms that we're talking about today, and those are the things that everybody's had a lot of question about and really trying to put some face to. And when you do a search online, there's a lot of discussion about this and a lot of mix-ups too. I find that people are interchanging adaptive and responsive web design quite regularly. So what I wanted to do was help kind of shed some light on the differences between some of these items. The first one on the list, adaptive web design, is all about targeting features for a specific device or use. It focuses on the browser functionality and the use of the browser and how the user is going to use what's in front of it, instead of being fluid or being, working with the same kind of approach that responsive does. Responsive and adaptive kind of mean the same thing when you define them. So if you search in Google for responsive or adaptive web design, you actually get a lot of examples for the same things because Google does its synonym search. But when we're talking about this stuff, it's totally different. Adaptive normally uses fixed sizes, and it spits out specific sizes, layouts, or content based on the device or the browser. And then it also disables or enables functionality based on the functionality supported. So if you got an Android device and an iOS device and a Windows Phone device, for instance, for your quote mobile devices, you might actually have an entirely different kind of experience on them based on what they support for functionality. Same thing for desktop. So that's one of the big things for adaptive. Another big thing for adaptive is that you can actually spit out completely different HTML for a mobile or desktop. And that is a lot different from responsive. You guys are seeing the slides too, correct? It's showing up properly?
Yeah, we got them.
Cool. So responsive design actually uses the same HTML, and it focuses that HTML to fit within a certain screen area or size, commonly referred to as the viewport, and it uses a fluid layout to do so using media queries in your CSS. Your HTML behind the scenes is normally exactly the same, whether you're on a desktop, a tablet, a phone, and you're normally using, well, one CSS file. Sometimes you can break it up into multiples, but it's typically one CSS with a bunch of media queries to set a foundation for your styles and then adapt them and make them fluid or responsive to the actual device size that they're fitting within. Another term that is being thrown around a lot on the internet is progressive enhancement, and this is something that's new, well, newer. And this is all about how you go about designing or developing the web page, where responsive and adaptive focus on how the content fits within the device. Progressive enhancement is how you actually build it up to do that. You'll normally use progressive enhancement along with an adaptive or responsive layout, and it's because progressive is how you lay out the base foundation for your website and kind of put all the important information in, and then as you want to target bigger devices or desktops and things like that, you start adding functionality upon it and really building it out progressively as you go down the road to bring in new devices or bring in different targets that you weren't necessarily targeting before. So progressive enhancement's all about starting with a base foundation, kind of like building a house, and then adding floor 1 and then floor 2 on top of it and so on, going up. With graceful degradation, you're actually doing the opposite. So it would be like starting with a skyscraper and then realizing, oh, the airport's going to go in down the road, so now you need to take off half the building. I mean, that's not exactly like that, but that's a pretty close approach. You're removing functionality based on lack of support for that for the different target segments and markets that you want to hit. So you're actually building out the most complete version of a website that you can or an application that you can, and then you're saying, okay, I need to support IE7. So then you're basically taking everything out. Or you're saying, I want to support certain mobile sites or certain mobile devices, and for Android I can do this, for iOS I need to do this. So you're actually toggling the functionality and removing it from your website as opposed to adding it in to allow the experience to be fluid across all the devices. So removing animations for mobile, you'd seen Graceful Degradation where a website would actually build out a complete Flash site for a desktop and then remove all the Flash components so that they could actually have a quote mobile website. So that's kind of the difference between them. It's totally reversed from progressive enhancement, and this has been used from the days of IE support because Graceful Degradation has been used to support old versions of IE since, well, IE came out. So there's a lot of question on which approach is best for this, and this is something that's like talking Mac versus Windows or Ford versus Dodge online. It really depends on what is best for your approach for your environment. Some people like to do a complete website and then scale down and build down to fit their mobile targets, so they might take a Graceful Degradation approach. Others actually want to start with a marketing approach, which I say marketing approach because a lot of the marketing focus is getting a concise, clear message out there and then building functionality upon that, and that's where your progressive enhancement approach comes in. Honestly, right now, what you find a lot of is that the flavor of the week is the popular one. So people really be on this one driving force for Graceful Degradation, and then all of a sudden the next week it's no longer a fashion fad. Progressive enhancement is the way to go. So it all depends on your environment and your needs. My big one is actually a combination, and this is something that is getting talked about a little more now, and it's called RESS, to keep in a kind of context of LESS and SAS and all the other acronyms out there. It's responsive design with a server-side component, and it's kind of like combining adaptive with responsive. And it allows you to use a server-side component to serve up different HTML, markup, layout, maybe different CSS, based on the target that you're going for, or based on the device that a user is visiting with. And then you're choosing an approach to build that, Graceful Degradation or Progressive Enhancement. I honestly have been really fixed on graceful degradation because that's what I started with, and it's a big shift of mindset to go progressive enhancement, but that's kind of the way I'm going now, is starting to target progressive enhancement. But this is a good combination and a good way to explore approaching various mobile devices and saving bandwidth. And one of the big things that I find that's nice with the server-side component here is that in today's world, we have a lot of people coming in from 4G and 3G connections. Mobile is the big thing. Mobile as in phones or tablets on data connections. And it's all about quick response and sometimes even limiting the amount of data that a user is going to have to load to their phone because they only have, say, a gig or 500 meg. So your server-side component can take that request, figure out the target that it's going to, and then spit out only what it needs to for that mobile device, and then you can have your responsive layout then adapt that. So this is actually one of the big things that's, I think, the new flavor of the week coming up soon. We'll be talking to Ben and Jerry's about that later.
So that's is that okay? Is that the last slide, or you got more?
That's it. Just a quick run through of some of the terms so we can kick into a discussion about the different approaches and some questions.
Yeah, thank you. It's always good to have that, so we're all on the same page for what each of these means, right?
Yeah, and I think that was really useful.
Yeah. You got a big head shake from Jay on IE7 support, though.
Yeah, I've been heckling you on Twitter. I'm sorry about that. Just this month. But I really want to say, though, I really, really agree with your point, which is you really can't make a hard and fast decision over which particular methodology you're going to use all the time. The best thing to do is going to be to, like you said, talk to your marketers, find out specifically what type of devices your clients are going to be accessing the site with, because that's really going to change how you're going to do it. If, like, the majority of your traffic is coming in for a big, desktop site, they want the experience, they're viewing it on a TV or something, you're going to design it differently. You're going to put in more functionality that has nothing to do with devices than the opposite situation in which you have a majority, like say you have a really skewed young clientele. They're going to really come in. You're definitely going to want to go with a mobile first and progressive enhancement model. It can't be said enough, I think, that focusing on specifically what you're trying to achieve with your site is the starting point of any kind of design discussion.
I absolutely agree. It has to be business goal first. That's the starting point and everything else.
I was going to say, I think that's a point that a lot of businesses, marketing groups, and designers overlook when they're kicking off on the project. Really taking a look at what your target audience is, not just from a factor of old versus young, hipsters versus business people, but also what devices these people are actually using. Because like you said, Jay, you got a lot of the young kids nowadays that they're sticking with their phones and their tablets wherever they go. And if you're targeting that audience, you obviously want to take a progressive enhancement approach because you want to be able to kick out your web design, even get that out there first before you really start building upon it for your desktop functionality. So I totally agree with that, and I think that's something that really needs to be focused on more.
So the part about progressive enhancement that I like is I think that progressive enhancement is a way of ensuring that everybody has access to the content.
Yes.
Where graceful degradation does not have that safety.
I would say that it depends on that. So we used a graceful degradation model for our portions of our homepage, and really what it came down to was we have a really cool billboard concept that works really well on iPads and larger devices, but when you get down to a really small screen, it just isn't really achieving the same thing that we had tried to achieve with the mobile client. And so we decided to degrade that way, and it really now I'm having to
I'm not saying that it doesn't work, and I'm not saying that in that case you're applying it to screen size specifically. Progressive enhancement, you're making sure that even if you don't have JavaScript and CSS enabled, you still have access to the content.
Yeah, right.
with Graceful Degradation, somebody's going to build out the latest and greatest features, the latest, greatest browser. But when they do put in the fallbacks for when a feature's not supported or something along those lines, there's always a stopgap where they say it's no longer worth my time to provide fallbacks.
Right.
They fall back only so far. Progressive Enhancement flips that on its head, and you start by saying the HTML is accessible, the HTML and CSS is accessible, and then you start adding feature functionality on top of that.
I'll devil's advocate for a second. Who's out there browsing with a site that there's a browser that doesn't support JavaScript, and why are they on the internet? And who hasn't taken their computer away from them?
Well, I'll use a personal experience with that. My dad is legally blind.
Okay.
And so then in his case, it can make a difference if the CSS and JavaScript don't support him being able to access the content.
Right.
He's not browsing necessarily with CSS and JavaScript disabled, but certain things can make it more difficult for him.
I gotcha. So in that situation, so he's using a screen reader probably then. We have to deal with this actually a lot. Being a public or a college, we try to focus on Section 508, 503. It's one of those numbers.
Yeah.
And there's support things that you can do to support that kind of thing. I think what you're really getting at, and I think I 100% agree, is you have to make sure that your site, when those things don't work, doesn't completely fly apart. And I think in that sense, I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
The ARIA roles for pieces, ensuring that I really recommend people hit their site with a screen reader if you really want to try to do more SEO stuff, because that's what some of the bots see when they come to your page.
Or just go get a link browser or something, a console browser, and you can do the same kind of thing. So let's see. We've got a couple of comments. Orrin Walker says we built one of our sites with adaptive for mobile. The normal site is Flash-based, and now 90% of traffic comes from mobile. I think that highlights a paradox that we're starting to see. Hopefully we're starting to overcome. Are you seeing no mobile traffic because you're not getting mobile traffic, or are you not seeing mobile traffic because your site's terrible on mobile?
Yeah. My wife uses her phone downstairs, even though she's got a tablet and a laptop next to her. The phone is just more convenient when she's got our son with her on the sofa, and she'll be browsing like Gap or Old Navy or something like that, just taking a look at the sales based on the email she just received, and I can't count the number of times when she'll text me or call up to me and be like, oh, I can't get this to work on the page. I'm so frustrated with it. And she'll just leave it and she won't even go back to it because it is trying to detect some functionality on her mobile device and just doesn't know how to behave, or she can't click the link because they didn't take into account the size of it on a 5-inch screen.
Do you remember when Amazon's mobile site was horrendous for the longest time? It's gotten a lot better in recent years, but it was the king of the M-dots of, I hate you, take me back to the real site, I wish to purchase something from you, give it back to me.
And it's even worse when the mobile site is that bad and there is no option to go back to the real site.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Kenny had a great comment. Confession time. Do any of y'all really spend a lot of time worrying about how your site runs with Node.js? I know I don't. Kenny, I'm going to propose something for you. You need to think about this not in the sense of, has someone turned the JavaScript off? What if your JavaScript breaks? What if it gets loaded in a bad cache? Can you still function? That's the problem that we try to aim for. What happens when JavaScript breaks?
How many
I think a lot of it.
No script tags?
Occasionally, yeah. I have done that when using something like picture fill or something along those lines to provide a fallback for an image that otherwise would just be set with JavaScript.
I honestly think that the JavaScript component, especially now that all the libraries like jQuery and your Knockout, MooTools, ever since all of those have really become so popular, I really feel like we all don't even think about JavaScript as not being supported anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it really is in my mind, it's a frontline technology now, not a sideline, which is what it was when I started development.
Yeah, it's just expected that a user's going to have it. That's actually one of the things. There was a bug in Android browser that caused the JavaScript-enabled checkbox to go off periodically, and that was one of the things my wife was complaining about because I think Gap, if you don't have JavaScript enabled, it just pops up a message that says you must have JavaScript enabled to view this website.
Nice.
That's it.
Which is where progressive enhancement probably would make that experience quite a bit better.
Great example.
Yeah.
You know, and I would wonder too, like if their site requires JavaScript to that extent, to where they just are like, no, you know, how big must that site be? Like like download the page time for that kind of stuff. Even if they're doing a lot of Ajax things, I feel like that could get a little out of control. That's one of the big things we tried to really focus on, and I think that's a great argument for progressive enhancement is how big is the content that you are trying to cram into this browser going to be?
Yeah. Your content strategy plays a part, and that's why you need to go pick up Karen McGrain's book and read it, because your content strategy is really pivotal to how you design your site and what features you put in. It all has to center on that strategy, which itself is centered on the business goals. I mean, it all comes back to what is the goal of the organization. So we were talking a little bit about adaptive versus responsive and knowing your demographic. So I'm gonna throw this out here, and David, I think you'll argue with me, and I appreciate you for that. I think that most public-facing websites are not going to have a different content strategy, different business strategy on desktop versus mobile, and therefore most of them are going to benefit from a responsive-based solution, whether that is just responsive or whether it's REST. I think that most sites need that solution and not an adaptive solution.
Well, REST is an adaptive solution when you think about it, because REST is combining your responsive elements on the front end with your server-side component to serve up what you need for the adaptive piece, which I think that's the way that most of the stuff should start to target, but I don't think enough people know about that. A lot of your airline companies or your hotels, Amazon is one of those where you pretty much have the same experience whether you're in desktop or mobile. You just have a different way to get it. But airlines, when I saw something, a presentation given by, I think it was Delta, about their approach to mobile app versus mobile website and mobile website versus desktop. And a lot of times when you're mobile with an airline website, your approach is to check flight status and see how things are, possibly to check in. But when you're on a desktop view, whether a laptop or an actual desktop or even a tablet, you might actually be doing your booking and your shopping. So even though the end goal could be the same, a lot of times what you're seeing people use it for is totally different. So you might use the REST and adaptive approach to serve up a different landing page or a different initial start point with different markup for your phone users versus your tablet and your desktop users. And I actually think that's a lot of those cases are actually really good cases for the REST approach. I just don't think enough people understand how it works.
So maybe we need more samples out there on the Dev Center.
Not only more samples, but more definitions and more distinction between what the actual adaptive and responsive is. Because I honestly think a big issue now is responsive is the big term. Responsive design is the big target right now. And a lot of people are also associating adaptive with responsive, so they're not actually drawing the difference that adaptive is not the exact same thing as responsive, because when you search Google, it's the same thing that shows up. Synonyms. I think that's our fault as developers for coining these terms that are so similar.
I blame Ethan Marcotte. He actually said something, I believe it was the last synergy, that is kind of my quick way to remember which is which, and that is that you'll notice with responsive sites versus adaptive sites, responsive sites you never really feel like anything goes away, whereas with adaptive you will hit a point and things will snap and parts will fall off. So I just try to always remember the snapping. Our site does that because we did it with our own built responsive framework, which, again, I recommend that you not do that unless you're really crazy. So,
yeah, I'm not going to go build my own car either.
Right. It's probably, I mean, it's cool, and dude, it's a lot of fun, but you'll come back later and go, we spent a lot of time working on that.
And now we need to add features to it, and that's the real grind. That's when you need to extend that, and it's tougher to do. So I think that REST is definitely the way to go, because you're always going to have something that's not really relevant on either mobile or on your desktop site. So you're not going to serve up as many CTAs or different images or something like that. But I'm sorry, I needed to delay before I left at that. Just saw that come up on the bottom, by the way, not full picture. So things like, to me, an obvious one is navigation. Your entire HTML navigation structure, your whole markup may change around the navigation for your mobile experience versus your desktop experience. I see a lot of people trying to create mega menus, which is a fad that I don't like, but they want these mega menus on their desktop site, and then they say, well, we'll eventually figure out how to cram that down into 320 pixels wide. Yeah. And that's completely the wrong way to go about it. Let's figure it out on mobile, and let's keep it concise and easy to use. And to me, 57 links inside a big drop-down panel is not very user-friendly.
Right.
But still, you're going to have different markup. If you want to do it that way, your HTML markup itself may need to be different to support two different navigations.
Right.
And the adaptive portion of REST is going to allow you to swap those out based on, is this mobile or not?
Right, and not actually send massive duplicate HTML blocks to the site, the content that's not going to get displayed.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's one of the other benefits when I was mentioning, your quick response and limiting the amount of data that a page has to use. I mean, I'm with James. I'm not a big fan of the mega navs at all. I had to implement 5 or 6 websites within a couple months of my last place, and they all had these massive mega navs with huge images in them too. And those images even eat up bandwidth, and making it mobile, they actually all employ just a responsive design approach. So if you were on your mobile phone and you took the source, you would still see the huge mega navs just hidden in the background with the images set off. So yeah, it's a fad that can't go away soon enough.
Well, and mega menus are horrible too, because you can't find what you're looking for. I mean, it's not targeted to what you're actually doing in the context of the page that you're working on. And if it's not showing up what you're actually working on, who cares? You get lost in the madness of all of the, I don't even know. There's too many options of going somewhere else. Or I'll just use the search engine for navigation.
Yeah.
Taking a soft shortcut, I don't know, side path here. Oren posted up a comment about his site, how it uses basically an adaptive approach to push the user to a mobile site if they don't have support for what they need, if they can detect whether it's a tablet or a phone. One of the other nice things that the REST approach or the adaptive approach allows is that you don't even need to have that mobile site. The whole point of those is to actually use just one website to serve up the different content, and then, I mean, if you want to, you can have a full site link in the bottom that then changes something behind the scenes to serve up the entire thing if you want to. So.
Right. And I would say, I mean, Oren, you probably already know, you don't need to be using Flash anymore.
It's on its way out.
It's not very responsible.
6 pages. I don't know. It works great for video. We've done a lot of the adaptive solutions that we've done a lot of work with, specifically with Modernizer and functionality and feature detection, have been trying to serve streaming video for players. For a while, we were doing our own streaming video solution, and it was extremely complex. But we ended up having to write some JavaScript stuff to figure out, what media format can your browser use? what player format can we use for this? Can you do it directly with the HTML5 component? Because that would be awesome. Can you not do that? Do we need to start embedding object stuff? We ended up using Flash for that with some. It actually was HTML5 failover to Flash with the strobe player. I don't know if anyone's used that. If you ever have any questions about that, I'll talk your ear off to that forever. But those are the points there, I think, that where browser technology and licensing on codecs and stuff is still kind of wild and crazy. That's where adaptive really shines to me, and especially with this responsive server-side component, I think that would be perfect for that solution. In fact, that's pretty much the way it worked. Is it did a lot of user agent detection on the front end, and then did some client-side responsive stuff to fit to the frame based on available technology.
So here's an idea that I like, is that you can do some of that device detection using something, or feature detection rather, using something like Modernizer, and then an AJAX request the data you need.
Exactly.
So you don't even have to do that server side, because the server side isn't going to be able to tell you as accurately if a device supports, say, CSS3 transitions or something along those lines. You're going to have a lot more false positives or false negatives with the server-side detection on something like that, because it's relying on a data store of just average information, but it's not going to tell you whether the device actually has it enabled.
Hey, I'm going to plug into this whole responsive adaptive conversation with something that Ken and I have discussed in the past that we have brought up numerous times on office hours or tweets. MVC allows for some really nice swapping of views based on detection to make this adaptive approach really, really easy.
Oh, I think that is true, and I've also experienced that.
It's just having a really easy to plug in Ektron API or approach with MVC would be fantastic for this.
You can plug in Ektron APIs into an MVC project, and that is not difficult to do. Coming soon on Office Hours. No, we can definitely talk about that. It's done as a 3-tier, but you can definitely pull in Ektron DLLs into an MVC site. That's how I built Synergy. The Synergy website is MVC. So it can work. There are some limitations. There are Ektron features that will not port over, like Page Builder, or at least not port over with obscene amounts of work. But yeah, we can definitely talk MVC on an upcoming Office Hours.
I'd like to just one more time tout this glorious artistic thing. I can't see my hands, so I'm assuming this is the work of our very own Jen Murray, and she'd just like to congratulate Dustin on his new journey.
Well done, Dustin. Well done. And thank you, Jen, for the creative flair that you add to this community.
Because the rest of us cannot draw.
We cannot do it. We'd be lost.
Yeah. There'd be lots of grays.
Okay, let me open Microsoft Paint. All right, so we're out of time. We're a little over time. Good conversation. I think this is a good topic, and probably something that the three of us and several others in the community could just sit and talk about for days. I'm going to go with days.
Yeah.
So we'll pick this back up, I'm sure, sometime and try to do a deeper dive, especially if we can get some samples going for how to use Modernizer to enhance your Ektron site. I think, Jay, you could probably chime in on that. You're using Modernizer on your site.
Yes.
And then some of what is available for server-side device detection. And there are multiple libraries out there. I know Ektron comes packaged with Wurfel. There are a couple of others that may actually make it a little easier to just do that mobile or not call. So we can pick this back up and talk about it more on a future Office Hours, as well as talking about MVC. So if you guys have any samples you want to put together and bring to the community over Office Hours, then let me know and we'll take care of that.
I'm working on an MVC web API thing, so.
You've been working on that for months, Jay. Bring it to the table.
I've had to release this new student portal thing, so.
Yeah.
Hard to do. It's hard to do fun stuff when you have to do real stuff. So proof of concept.
Summer, the semester's over. You're good now. You've got like 3 months. You have till Labor Day.
No.
Yeah, doesn't everybody that works at a school get a vacation when the students leave?
That would be awesome. We, in fact, do all of our major infrastructural change projects over the summer, so this is actually the worst possible time. But don't have to worry about that. That's our glorious fun.
All right. Thanks, David. Thanks, Jay. David, thank you for doing the PowerPoint slides of the definitions. I think that was really helpful to get that out.
I learned a lot.
Good talking to all you guys today.
All right, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.